He's a heartbeat away.
Michaela, what are you doing? Or did you think this was over?
From catching the killer.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another classic Clint Eastwood review. Today I'm taking a look at the 2002 action thriller Bloodwork that is of course directed by Clint Eastwood, who stars in the film as well as Jeff Daniels, Angelica Houston, Wanda de Cruz and Tina Lifford. Now the film focuses on Clint Eastwood's character Terry McCaleb, who at the beginning of the film is a veteran FBI profiler who is chasing a serial killer called the Codebook serial killer, something like that. He's getting closer and closer. He ends up at a crime scene and he thinks he spots the killer in the crowd. He chases him down, but not being a young man, he ends up having a heart attack. It then jumps forward several months sort of thing. He's now retired, he's had a heart transplant, and he's trying to kind of live a peaceful life sort of thing. He lives on a boat, on a dock, he's just trying to chill out. And then he's approached by a woman who says that the heart he has been given was from her sister, who was killed in a hold-up very recently. And the heart was given to him, and she asks if he will investigate her sister's death in order to figure out who killed her. Along the way, Clint Eastwood discovers that the killer of her sister may well be connected very closely to him. Right, what are my thoughts on Bloodwork? I actually think this is one of Clint Eastwood's most underrated films. I remember when this came out, I might have actually gone to cinema to see this when it came out. I can't just remember, but I might have done. And I've always enjoyed this. I don't think it's obviously his finest. It wouldn't probably make his top 10 of all time, obviously. But it's a very enjoyable and watchable Clint Eastwood action thriller. It's one of the last roles he did, where he was kind of playing like the cop or that type of role. I think it was his last role, actually, as a cop. I'm right in thinking. And it was really an interesting concept, the fact that they were treating him like an elderly man in this film. He has this heart attack at the beginning, he needs a heart transplant. And even though you see him like being pretty badass a couple of times in this film, you also see him getting his ass handed to him a couple of times as well, because he's not a young man anymore, and he's obviously not a well man anymore, because he's got to look after his heart, because he's literally just had the transplant a few weeks earlier. So he's got to take care of himself. Which he clearly isn't in this film, because he kind of becomes obsessed with helping this woman, because he feels like he has an obligation, really, that he's got her sister's heart in his chest and he feels like he owes her something. What he doesn't realise until later in the film is that he's being played, and for some people it's a twist you'll see coming a mile away. For others, it'll hold the mystery till the reveal takes place. For me, I think the first time I watched it, I think it was a nice surprise for me, but for others, the mileage may differ, sort of thing. But it's a competently made action thriller by Clint Eastwood, who could do films like this with his eyes closed. He's obviously great at doing the $1 Million Babies and the Unforgivens and the Gran Torinos and all these Invictus and all these great movies, where he is the director and he's doing all these wonderful pieces, but he can do anything really. And I think this film really proved it, really evidenced that. He carries the film brilliantly, even at the age he's at in this film. He carries the role off. It's not. Some people argue that Clint Eastwood occasionally he just gives one-dimensional performances. I think this is actually a fairly layered and complex performance by Clint Eastwood. He shows vulnerability. He also has got like a humorous side to him, sort of thing. It's almost like a cross between his character in The Line of Fire and, I don't know, not Dirty Harry so much, but something along them lines. It's like somewhere in the middle of those two characters. And he does really well with the part, and he's always super watchable. As you know, guys, I am a huge fan of Clint Eastwood. He's my favourite actor of all time. He's completely legendary. Of course he is. And there's very few Clint Eastwood films out there that I can't sit down and watch and enjoy. And I just think more people need to kind of watch this and check it out, because it's such a nicely made film. Very interesting. It keeps the mystery going from beginning to end, really, for the most part. You could argue, what's Angelica Houston doing in this film? She doesn't have an awful lot to do. I can't really argue with that point. Jeff Daniels is in the film, who's always watchable, playing like his surfing bum that kind of lives on the same dock as Clint Eastwood, who ends up kind of driving him about, Clint Eastwood, as he's investigating and stuff like that. And there's a good, nice chemistry between the two of them. So it's a nicely paced, well-made film. I watched this. I've just picked it up fairly recently, and added it to the collection. And I watched it with my wife, who'd never seen it before, and she likes Clint Eastwood as well, and she really enjoyed it. So if you like a good action thriller, I mean, there's not, by today's standards, you know, this ain't John Wick. You know what I mean? This isn't that type of action film. It's a very, in a lot of ways, very old-fashioned type film, the way it's structured and filmed and made, sort of thing. But it feels classic in that sense, you know what I mean? It's got cliched characters in here that don't necessarily suit the film particularly well. There's like a couple of police detectives that Clint Eastwood kind of keeps clashing with. His character keeps clashing with, and one of them in particular is insanely annoying, frustrating, you know, his attitude toward the Clint Eastwood character that just wouldn't happen really in the way it's portrayed in the film. So there are frustrations here, but I think, for me anyway, this is an underappreciated Clint Eastwood film. That I say that I've always personally enjoyed, and I would suggest if you have never seen Bloodwork, and you are obviously aware of Clint Eastwood and his work, and his filmography, and this is one that slipped under the radar, give it a watch. Let me know in the comments what you think of this film, and of course I will be back with loads more content and reviews on the channel very, very soon.